Hello and welcome to Board Game Gumbo. Today we're unboxing Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor from Nemesis Games. This is a cooperative action selection 4X game for 1 to 4 players. It plays in about 2 to 4 hours. And as you can see, this is quite a big game. There's a lot in here. We've got some extra stuff to show you too, but let's go ahead and get into this base box. I was very excited to get a copy of this game because there's a couple of things going on here that I'm really interested in. Looks like we got just a little warning package here because there's some small parts in here. So here we have just a bunch of punch board. These are resources, so there are 3 different types of resources. I forget the name. I think this is food down here, and this is salt, if I remember correctly, and then whatever the red resource is. And then next to it we have a whole bunch of tiles. Go ahead and punch a couple of those out. And they punch out nice and easy. That was a little bit sticky. Come on. Alright, well most of them punch out really easy. This one in the corner, for whatever reason, is fighting me. Let's try the other way. Oh, alright. Well, let's see what's going on here. So it looks like the cut wasn't very good on the back here. It's a little disappointing. I'll have to, that one too is a little sticky. I'll have to leave those in and probably get like an X-Acto knife or something, just to make sure that we don't want to tear the back of it there. But otherwise, so we have some tiles here. You'll see on the back they'll tell you what type of tile they are. So they are unexplored, but you know this is a green tile. And so when you flip it over, you notice that it gives green resources. This is what you'll gain at the beginning of the round. So you kind of have some information about a tile before it flips over, but these will all be on the board face down, and this is part of the explore part of 4X, because you'll be moving around the board and exploring these different hexes. Some of them, like this one, has a sea tower on it. Sea towers are special locations because they are considered adjacent to every other location. It's like a teleport effect. But so when you go to a location, you'll flip it over. Some locations will have this impassable terrain. That's what these little white lines mean, and that essentially means that units can't move over that boundary. But once you turn over a location, you'll then have the opportunity to rotate it. So exploring these locations are beneficial because you get to decide what orientation it's in. And then they have something that happens. So this one, you'll gain 3 of any resource. And then if this spot is empty, you'll place 2 skeletons here. If not, you'll reinforce here. And then you'll activate the legion with the highest initiative, or horde with the lowest. So it's a lot of information there, but basically resources are good, skeletons are bad, and then activating a legion or a horde is really bad. So this is kind of like that one's got a bit of a trade-off there. But those are sort of the location hexes. And as you can see, you have quite a few of them. You are not going to use all of them in a game, so there's a little bit of variability there. This one is special because this is the capital. The capital is always at the middle of the board. It's the central location every time you play. Otherwise, these locations are all just randomly put out onto the board. And again, we got quite a few of them there. So here's our main game board. And this is a big board. This game, it's 2 to 4 hours. It's a 4X game. It's going to take up quite a bit of table space. But let's see if we can get at least some of this board in frame here. And this one isn't too bad. Of course, there's a couple other boards off to the side there if you didn't notice. All right, so there's a lot of things about this board that I really like. So first of all, we have our victory points on the outside track. One of the aspects of this game I really like is that it is a cooperative game, but all players have to beat the 2 AI opponents. So they're basically 2 bad guys in the game, and they score points just like players do. And all players have to beat their scores. So you can't just have one person kind of doing really well, you have to help each other out. So I mentioned already that the capital is always going to be in the middle there, and then you'll have these random locations on the outside, and then these exterior ones will have nothing. And there's a reason for that. But one of the things I really like about this board is that on this side, as well as on the other side, if you can see, are these sort of reminders. So There's a reminder here of what the different terrains mean, because some terrains have different effects. When you're in the Badlands, for instance, your rider units add their dice to the archery phase of combat because they can participate. And then over here, you have sort of the combat, how combat works. These are the dice that these different units use when you do combat, and also tells you what happens in special circumstances. So if you're fighting skeletons, this is what skeletons roll. They roll 2 red dice during the melee round. If you're fighting these garrisons here, which are Imperial units, they fight in the ranged round of combat with a certain number of white dice, and then they fight in the melee round of combat with other dice as well, depending on how many tiers they have, 1, 2, or 3. So these are just little nice reminders, and it's nice that they put them on the board. They found space for them. The other 2 boards that we have over here, so we have this board here, which is just a place to put the legions and the hordes. So there are 2 different bad guys in this game. This is another aspect of this game I really like. The Legion is essentially the capital, and we are revolting nations against the capital. So the capital obviously is our enemy. The capital has a deck of bad guys, basically like commanders, that can come out during the course of the game, and they're obviously pretty difficult to defeat. Also, whenever the Imperials kill anything, they go into the Imperial graveyard, and that's one of the ways that they can score victory points. Over here you have the Chaos. Chaos are, they hate everybody. They're basically skeletons and monsters, and they are invading the territory, and one of your jobs is, while also, you know, leading this uprising against the Imperials, you're trying to keep the Chaos from destroying your nation in general. So they also have a deck of cards, which are, again, bad guys, liches, and things like that, that'll come out and play. And they also have a graveyard, because that's another way that they score points. So this board is basically just a way to control where all these different things go, and you'll have all the figures here as well. I also really like just the art on the back. And then we have another board here, and this is basically just a place to put a bunch of cards that you'll use during the course of the game. One of the things I really like is that has this chapter track on here. And again, this is just a reminder. This is everything you do during a round of play. So you have the refresh phase at the very beginning, where you'll reveal druid cards, which are basically like setting cards. They're, you know, they'll have 4 chapters potentially, depending on how long of a game you want to play. And those cards will get flipped over, and things will happen. Legions will come out. Hordes will come out. Things like that. Action points, again, it's an action selection game, so you'll have 8 action points in the course of a round. You'll reset the market and the quests and things like that, and then you go to the event phase. You go to the build phase. This is where your character gets more powerful. They draw 2 feats from their personal feat deck, and then they can keep 1 to have for the rest of the game, and then you can build units during the build phase. And then you get to the action phase. So the action phase is where your characters are doing all of the things they want to do. They're using all 8 of their action tokens to do different effects, and obviously we'll see more of that when we get into the actual game components. Then you have a Nemesis phase, where the legions and the hordes will activate, move around the board, potentially attack players, but they can also attack each other. Which is another interesting aspect of this game. The Chaos and the Imperials are not working together. If you can set up a situation where the Chaos move onto a space with Imperial units, they will absolutely try to kill those Imperial units. That's another thing I like about this game, is that you can be clever in the way that you force enemy units to move to your advantage. The production phase, you'll gain resources based off of what areas you control, and then the scoring phase happens at the end. So again, you have to beat the Empire, and you have to beat the Chaos. All players have to beat both of them for you to be able to win. So here's how players score, here's how Chaos score, and here's how Empire score. So you're trying to stay ahead of both of those factions. All right, so that's all the boards in the game. So let's get into the rest of our components in this very large box. So again, more cheat sheets. This just explains how combat works. And then on the back here, we have rules on how things are placed. So whenever, like a tile we said showed earlier said place skeletons, it explains what place skeletons mean. And it also tells you the page in the rulebook to find the more specific rules on placing skeletons. So that's really cool, very handy, multiple of them, which is nice. And then the combat sequence, again, there's an archery round. Some units participate in archery, some don't. Then there's a clash round, or the melee round, where, again, most units will participate in the clash round, from what I understand. Even the ones that already could participate in archery will, again, participate in clash. And then you'll have a repeat, and basically the clash keeps going until one side is out of forces. There is no retreat, really. I believe there are some special cards or abilities that players can get that will allow them to retreat, but in the basic game, without those special abilities, there is no retreat. You fight until you die. Here is our actual rule book. And I do like the spiral binding on the rule book. It's pretty nice. You don't see that very often. Again, all of our component list. It's nice to see sort of a table of contents here, just to sort of skip to the things you're really interested in. So obviously setup, here's how the board goes. Again, the capital is always in the center, and the Empire is going to start with these garrisons out already on the board. And they'll start with a 3 garrison in the center where the capital is, and they'll start with 3 1 garrisons as well. And those are just essentially their forces. So the legions have 2 types of forces. They have the garrison, and then they have those Imperial units, which are really strong. Whereas the Chaos have skeletons, which are kind of the little weak guys, but if too many congregate in a single area, they turn into a stronger guy. They have curses, which are just these little tentacles, and then they have the big bad guys, like the liches and stuff. And again, we'll see more of that as we get into the other components. Game length, you can actually change the game length by only playing a certain number of events or cards. And you can also, we'll see when we get into it, the cards are essentially leveled. So if you want to make the game easier, instead of doing a 1, 2, 3, and 4, you could do 2 1s and 2 2s, and that'll make the game a little bit easier. Basic game concepts. This is essentially the different phases of the game. But from what I've seen, you can actually play this game for the most part just with those guides. The guides that are on the board, the guides that are on the side of the game board itself that tell you the different phases of the game, the little cheat sheets that tell you how combat works. Those are really enough to understand the game to get started, and then as you have questions, you can flip into this rule book. Let's see what else we got here. Combat. Again, that same cheat sheet that they give you is a page in the rule book, so that's nice. A lot of this we'll see as we get into the components, so I'm just kind of flipping through, make certain there's nothing that's too egregious here. We've got an index in the back, which is nice. Again, just a quicker way to find things. And then on the very back, sort of a cheat sheet. Hopefully they have like a card that has all this on it as we get into this. Okay, so player pieces here. We have several different factions. Every faction is slightly different. They have different units. The way their units are built have different costs. So like this guy's Sword Masters cost 1 blue and 1 red, and this one's Younglings cost 2 blue or 2 red. So there's a little bit of difference there. And you'll see these have specific heroes. They'll have a difference as well. They also accumulate resources differently. So at the beginning of each round, you'll get resources based off of how many havens you have out. And this tells you what you get. And again, it's a little bit different. Over here, we have the different actions you can take. So I mentioned that there is, you get 8 actions per round. Some actions you can do as much as you want. So the move action and the trade action, you can do as many times as you want. You could do trade action 8 times, but then you're not doing anything else. And then the other actions you will end your turn on. So say I wanted to move, I would put a cube here and take the move action. But my turn isn't over because I can do move as much as I want. I could move again. I could even move again and then trade. But the second I do one of these, I'm going to resolve that, and then my round will be over and the next player will go. So I can move and then command, or I can move, trade, and then do the haven action. My turn doesn't end until I do one of these 5 things. But if I burn all my actions on these 2, I'm obviously doing a lot less of these. So move and trade, kind of self-explanatory. Command lets you pay food, and you can move units. Explore is how you flip over an unexplored space. Haven is how you can put down one of your havens. Again, it's one of your bases. There has to be no curse in the spot or enemy unit, but you can put a haven down. Market is how you buy stuff from the market by paying salt. And a quest is you can send your hero on a quest, and we'll look at those. So here are all the different factions and all their different units. You can also, each faction can also build tower defenses and wall defenses around their havens, which is kind of interesting because it's a 3D aspect of the game. And then this is faction number 4. And then we got some punch board here. I believe that these are the Legion bosses, essentially. So they got little tokens for the Legion bosses. And then these are activation tokens, so these will go on the bad guys. And essentially, however many of these they have at the end of the round is how many times they activate. So if they get more than one, it's pretty dangerous. And then this tavern here, I believe it's just a starting location, or maybe it's just an extra location, I forget. Alright, so one of the other reasons I'm really excited about this game, not the trays themselves, but the figures. So I don't know about you guys, but I've kind of gotten worn out on all the 3D figures. They look really cool, but I don't get them painted as much as I would like, and I've got a whole stockpile of games with 3D figures. So I'm really excited when companies decide to do something different, and especially if the thing they did do different looks nice. I love these figures. These sort of acrylic figures. Their base is the same color as their player faction, so you can tell just at a glance that all these blue figures belong to this blue faction. It actually has on the figure itself the die that they use. So this uses a white die when it's in combat, and I believe it's also an archer, so it participates in the archery round. I just really like these, and I like the stands as well. I like the fact that they're not just, you know, circular or square like people would normally use. You'll also have your hero here. So this is the hero for the blue faction, and we're just going to slide one of these little things on the bottom of him like so, and there you go. So there's your figure. It's nicer than just a cardboard figure, but it's, you know, it has details like obviously they're not 3D, but I really like this. I think this is a great option instead of cardboard or instead of 3D plastic minis. I really like these a lot. So that was another reason I'm really excited about this game, is because of these figures. Also, you probably noticed that there's a couple of these boxes for all the different factions. And I won't go through all of them, but you'll also notice that, I can get the lid off of this one. There we go. You'll also notice that there are spots for the cards for each faction. And that's kind of a nice that there's a spot for it, but also nice that they labeled it. It's just a nice little touch. And again, here's our hero for the white faction, Feanor. I just really like these. I think this is a really smart choice. I'd like to see companies do more of that, and sort of get away from every game having 3D miniatures. It's kind of getting to be a lot. There's also some companies doing like meeple versions of their games instead, that would traditionally do 3D figures, so I'm liking that as well. More boxes here just for our different resources. Again, it's actually labeled, tells you what resource goes well where, which is a nice little inclusion. Another box for resources, so you can have 2 around the table. People aren't reaching over the table. And then these are your havens. So the blue player will have all the blue havens, obviously. Just little 3D tokens. I believe they're all pretty much the same, except for the color. Yeah, I mean, it's the same sculpt, just in different colors. But those are your havens that you'll put out. What else do we have over here? Oh. All right, so we have more minis. These are for the curses. So the curses have these tentacles that'll get put out, and they also have skeletons that'll get put out. Again, just a really nice choice, I think. Instead of doing a whole bunch of 3D minis. Probably makes the game cheaper too. Here's some of the hordes. So these are the big bad guys for the curses, basically. And these will kind of come out randomly. We'll see it when we get to their cards. There are cards representing all of these bad guys and their stats. So there's your Lich. And these will kind of come out randomly. Events will put them out for the most part. But also when you get too many skeletons in an area, you will get rid of the skeletons and one of these guys will show out as well. So that's a really bad thing. But there's all of our hordes. And then here we have the garrison pieces. Looks like these are all bases. So these are all tier 1 bases, garrisons. And then if they have another piece added to them. So this is essentially an Imperial unit, a single Imperial unit. If for whatever reason you have to reinforce an area that has one of these, instead you put one of these on top. Doesn't quite sit in there, but it should. Maybe have to clean up one of those edges or something. But these little pieces will sit on top of each other. And then eventually you can even get a third tier, which is this little crowning piece here. So it'll go just like that. So that's a tier 3 garrison, and then a tier 2 garrison, and a tier 1 garrison. And they all have different stats when you fight them. These are the Legion bosses, essentially, that can come out. So you have the Emperor himself, or the new Emperor, the Warlock, Imperial Guard, you got a Courtesan, Executioner, Spy Master, a Mage Breaker, and the Assassin. Again, I just really like these acrylic pieces. These, I don't know if these are stickers or whatnot, but they don't have like a raised edge, so it doesn't feel like they're going to peel off or anything. It's really nice. Our bases, here we have some of the defensive walls. So when you build a haven, the haven is just there. If anything comes and stands on the area where there's a haven and you have no units there, the haven gets destroyed. But you can actually build defenses. So you can build walls around your haven, which gives you some sort of natural defense if something ever comes attacks your haven, or just steps on the hex where you have the haven. You can also build little archery pillars that also just sit on your haven like so and add to the defenses of that haven. So nice little 3D pieces. Here we have just a bag of these little clips, and actually these are kind of interesting. I don't know if I like this concept. This is one of the concepts of the game I was not too thrilled about. It's that they use these little clips to mark things on cards, and I'll show you that when we get to the cards. But they are sculpted, which is really interesting and nice. You can see it's kind of got a 3D tentacle effect on the actual clip, and that's pretty interesting. I thought they were just basic clips. Okay, so last box, and it's going to be heavy, because we've already gone through quite a bit of stuff, and here is the last of it. So gems, these are just representing your actions. So every player will have 8 of these. These just represent your 8 actions that you take, and you're going to put them on your board. We have score trackers for all the different factions in the game, including the bad guys, because like I said, you not only you have to beat both bad guys. Every player has to have more points than both bad guys, or the players collectively lose. And these are really nice chunky pieces with stickers on them. We have our dice. So combat is done by dice. You'll roll dice depending on your units. So some units will give you a red die, some units may give you a single white die, some units will give you, a single blue die, and so on. Your heroes will also typically contribute dice to combat if they're in the combat. And basically you're just rolling these and comparing hits, which are skulls, to defenses, which are shields, and then occasionally you'll have something like magic. And hopefully you can use those magic. Not always can you. Alright, so cards. Let's start here with the small cards. So, a couple different types of small cards. First of all, each character, each faction leader has a deck of cards. These are special abilities that they have. They will gain those special abilities through the course of the game, and occasionally they'll gain extra if they go on things like quests. Typically, at the end of a round, you'll draw 2, and you'll decide to keep 1. Some of them affect actions. So like this one says, discard this to gain a basic unit on any of your havens for every horde and legion in play. So this is a one-time thing. This one, on the other hand, takes effect during a clash. It actually gives you the icon to show you that it's a clash card. And it says, discard this to roll the dice of your units that were destroyed here this round after damage on your hero's hex. So basically, your dying units get one last attack to try to take out the enemy. And again, this is a one-time use. It'll go to the discard pile. Some of these are once a round use, so this is flip this card to lose 1 hit and gain 1 magic before damage. So this is a one-time round thing. So this would just flip over after you use it, and at the beginning of each round it'll tell you to flip all your cards back up. So again, little things that you can gain, like this one. When you gain this one, you gain 3 resources, and then you're going to choose one of these. Either you're going to increase your leadership by 1, or you're going to increase your guile by 1. Sometimes when you do things, it will specifically increase one of your stats if you gain an item or something like this. Guile, as you can see here, gives you either 1 white or 1 yellow die when you roll, and then leadership gives you 1 blue die. The dice all have different sides, and I believe there's a cheat sheet for that. But basically you can improve your character stats. They also have item cards, so a whole bunch of item cards. They'll essentially be a market for these cards, and you can acquire them. They have a specific cost, and then they tell you what they do. Some of them have requirements on them, if I can find one. So like this one here. So this is a bottled demon. During the archery phase, you can pay 1 salt to gain 1 red die to use during the archery phase, and it says once per round, and it has to be on your hero's hex. This costs 4 to buy, but this here says that you cannot buy this unless you have 3 magic. So this is a stat that your character will have, and it has to be 3 or higher in order to buy this. So just a whole bunch of items. I don't actually, I haven't gone through all of these obviously, but it looks like there's no repeats, or very few repeats. So that's nice. A lot of these items are unique, even if they do something slightly similar. They are different items, so that's cool. We have some cards here. So are these more? Oh, these are more hero cards. So here's our other 2 heroes. Druid cards. So you pull 1 druid card every round, and these are things that will affect the rest of the game. So you'll put out 4 of these if you're playing a 4-round game. If you're playing less than 4 rounds, you'll put out fewer, obviously. And these are new things that people have access to during fights, but it applies to the bad guys as well as the players. So for the rest of the game, if this card is out during either of these phases, if you roll a lightning bolt, you can place 1 of your units from any graveyard in any unexplored hex without enemy units after you do damage, and only once per combat. But like I said, the curse and the Imperials can use that as well. So they're pretty interesting, they're pretty powerful, but they're sort of a double-edged sword. And then the other blue character. So there are actually 2 characters per faction. So there's 2 blue characters, 2 red characters, and we'll see those in here. So let's go ahead and get into the large cards here. All right, so here's that dice cheat sheet that I told you about earlier. It explains what all the sides on all the dice are. So obviously the black dice are going to have the most hits on them. They're going to have a 3-hit side. The purple dice are sort of the magic specialty dice. There's also a magic symbol on red dice. Blue dice favor defense. And then red dice, yellow dice, and finally white dice are kind of the weakest dice. But they're also the archery dice. Most archers have white dice. And then it explains what the 3 different symbols mean on the cards. And one of those per player, so that's really nice to see. These are event cards. So let's actually go this way. So quest cards. Every round there will be 3 quests out, and only 3 quests. If you complete one, most of the time you will not replace it. These are quests that you can send your hero on, and that's one of the actions you take on your turn. Whenever you send your hero on a quest, first of all, you're going to look at how many successes you need. So you need 1 or more success to complete this quest. And then you're going to look at what you get when you complete this quest. Place any horde in play on any hex and discard this quest. So you can move those hordes around, either to get them away from you. You can even move them. It says any hex. It doesn't say any empty hex. So you can even move them like onto the capital and make them fight the Imperials, which is really nice. And then there is a fail, which is activate the horde with the lowest initiative. The way these work is you're going to roll all the dice that your character, your hero has. And we'll see those when we get to the hero cards. But you're going to roll all the dice that your hero have, and you're trying to accomplish one of these 3 things. So you're either trying to get 4 hits, 1 shield, or 2 magic. And if you get even one of those, because you only need 1 success, you're going to get the success on it. So this one has an immediate effect. When this quest comes out, you immediately place 1 legion at threat 3 on the capital. And then while this quest is in play, if you destroy any legions or garrisons, you gain 2 resources. So this isn't a quest you send your heroes on. This is just sort of a quest that alters the state of the game while it's out there. And all of these quests, whether they're completed or not, will go away at the end of a round. So this will stay out for a full round. Let's see what else we got here. So this one has an immediate effect. Place 1 activation token on the horde deck. The next horde you draw gets this 1 curse on an empty hex. So that's both bad things, obviously. You need 1 or more success to solve it, and that will remove all activation tokens from 1 horde and then discard this card. However, if you complete this objective, you get 1 victory point. If you complete this objective, you get to remove 1 curse. And if you complete the middle objective to get a shield, you can draw a new quest. So this is one of the few times where when you complete a quest, 1 will come out to replace it. And it's only if you complete this center objective by getting a single shield. So these are the different quests that you can go on. Some of them do require multiple successes, but you can see that this one's a little bit easier to complete. Some will give you resources. Some will allow you to explore areas. They're kind of all over the place. There's a wide variety, and there's no repeats on these at all. So that's one of the aspects of the game. Is going on these quests with your heroes. Now we have the Legion cards, and then behind them, hopefully, we also have the Horde cards. So let's look at these 2. So these are the big bad guys in the game, right? So you got the skeletons, which are sort of the weak bad guys for the curse or the Horde, and then you have the garrisons, which are sort of the standard bad guys for the Legion. But then occasionally you'll get one of these Imperial Legion cards or Chaos Horde cards. And the way that these guys work, let's take one of each. They will come out onto the board. It'll tell you where to put them, and then we'll get one of these clips based off how strong they are. So let's say that the counter of omens, he comes out. He has an immediate effect. Place 2 skeletons on his hex. It'll tell you where to put him, what hex to put him on, and then it'll tell you where to put this clip. So let's say you put it at the 5 here, right? He's essentially got 5 health. Every time you deal a point of damage to him, this is going to go down 1 space until it eventually gets to the 0 and he's removed from the board. His health, his current health, tells you what he rolls in combat. So at 5 health, he rolls 4 white dice during ranged combat, and then during melee combat, he's going to roll 2 purple, 2 blue, and 1 yellow. He's also got a special effect. If he ever rolls that lightning, he places 2 skeletons on an empty hex. And when he's destroyed, if destroyed, place 2 skeletons here and gain 2 victory points. So that's how the Horde cards work. The Imperial Legion cards work essentially the same way. They're going to have a total number of life. This Courtesan is a little bit different because she just copies the unit, wall, and tower dice, but not items or feats of her enemy. So that's kind of interesting. And then, of course, she has her effect when she dies. And that's essentially how all of those cards work. They have sort of an initiative mechanic on them. That's what the numbers mean. But for gameplay, that's how it works. Here's our hero cards. So we got our 4 heroes, and these are double-sided. So whenever you play, say you want to play the red faction, you want to play Khal, who's really good at might. He rolls 3 3 red dice. Or would you rather play Dugpa, the seer, who rolls mostly magic and leadership dice? And again, you can look through their special cards to kind of make your decision. Obviously, Khal has more like straightforward fighting mechanics in his feat deck, where Dugpa has more, inspirational things, maybe making his units stronger because he does have a lot in leadership. And again, these are the things you'll be rolling when you do quests, and these are the stats that will affect what items you can buy. So we've got 2 heroes for each color. Syndra has a lot of magic, and Feanor the Archon is sort of, I guess, the most well-rounded. Actually, Yanni here is the most well-rounded. He's got 1 in everything. Or Baranth the Wall, who's got a lot of leadership. He's very tanky, right? Because the blue dice roll a lot of shields. And the final thing we have in this box are these event cards. So again, a full game is over 4 rounds, and each round you're going to draw an event card. You're going to draw a 1 card on round 1, 2 card on round 2, 3 on 3, and then a 4 on 4. If you want to make the game shorter, you can play fewer rounds, so only round 1 and 2. If you want to make the game easier, you can use lower tier cards. So you could do, on round 1 and 2, you could do a round 1 card, chapter 1 card, and then on rounds 3 and 4, you could do a chapter 2 card, just to make the game a little bit easier. Or if you want to make it harder, you can do all round 4 cards, which I wouldn't really recommend because these are pretty nasty. So this one is each player's place 1 of their activation cubes on the trade action to draw a feat. This is mandatory, so basically you're losing an action for this round, but in exchange you're getting a feat. And then for each player, place 1 legion at threat 7 on the capital, or 1 horde at threat 7 on an empty hex, and then place each horde in a different region if possible. Place 2 skeletons on any empty hex adjacent to a haven if possible, and then activate all skeletons. That's really, really bad. Imagine you're playing a 4-player game, and this card comes out as your last card. You're putting out 4 hordes, a combination of 4 legion and 4 hordes. So you're putting out 4 of those really big threats at threat 7, which is a lot. And you're also activating all skeletons. Again, when skeletons congregate in an area, when you have 3 or more in an area, they turn into a horde. So not only is this giving you 4 big bad guys to fight, it potentially could give you another 4 just on all these skeletons sort of clumping together. So that's a really tough one. And then you get to like chapter 1s, and they're much easier, right? Place 1 salt on each unexplored hex that shows salt. If you flip that hex, you gain the location. And then this one is place 1 legion at threat 4, at its target on a sea tower, and its target on a sea tower, and then place 1 horde at threat 4 on an empty hex adjacent to a different sea tower, and then place 1 curse on any hex with no X, empty if possible. Basically just means you're putting out 2 bad guys, right? You're putting out 1 legion and you're putting out 1 horde. That's a far cry from putting out, the card we just looked at, which is putting out 4 of those guys at threat 7. You're putting out 2 guys at threat 4. So those are the quest cards. Again, you'll draw 1 of those for each round and resolve it first. It's one of the first things you do in each round. And that's everything in the base box. So we got a couple extra things to show you that they sent us, but first of all, I'm going to clean all this up. Alright, so now we have the expansion to Uprising called the Arch Nemesis expansion. And I actually don't really know what's in here or what it changes in the game, so we're going to be sort of exploring this together. There are some extra available components for the game. There's an extra dice pack, and there's actually a little mini expansion that adds more items to the game. If you are interested in that, typically I like to get the extra dice at least, because then people aren't fighting for the dice. So we have, interesting, new tiles here. So these are, I don't know if these are new factions or what, but these are starting locations. So starting locations aren't double, don't have the unexplored side on the back. So this is specifically for these factions, whatever they may be. We've got some more of these little targeting tokens. So the way that these work is that in the game there's a legion, an Imperial Legion for this token. And when Imperial Legions come out, the token actually goes to a specific spot on the board. They target a specific spot. So that's what those tokens are for. And then we have some, looks like some little activation tokens, almost like events. So these are omens. I imagine there's some mechanic in the game that sort of tells you to draw an omen at a particular time. And it looks like these are all bad things. So we got one here. The Empire or Chaos gains 5 victory points. Again, really bad because every player has to beat both of the AIs. So choose the hex with the most non-Imperial units or threat, roll a black die into red die, and apply all hits. Yeah, these are really bad things. You don't want these things coming out. We got more punch board. So here is sort of a little cheat sheet for the Omen phase, which is nice. One of the things I like a lot about this game, as I'm seeing as I'm unboxing it, is there's a cheat sheet for pretty much everything, which is really nice. It keeps you from having to dig into the rule book all the time. So Omen's phase, I guess it gets added to the phase tracker on the main board. The first player rolls their hero dice. If they roll 4 hits, 2 shields, and or 2 magic, draw the top 2 omens and discard 1. Otherwise, draw only 1 omen. Interesting. Okay, so you're resolving an omen regardless, but if you're able to get one of these things, you can essentially have 2 to pick from. So you can pick the lesser of the 2 evils, I guess. So more omens here, and then these are okay. So these are extra sea towers, but this is an extra starting hex. So let's see how these work. Here's our new rulebook. It's actually pretty hefty for just an expansion rulebook. Again, we've got our little nice content here, so we can skip to exactly what we want to know. Okay, so we've got extra Legion cards, extra Horde cards. We have Arch Nemesis cards, which don't sound pleasant. And we have extra hero cards. So it looks like we've gotten more factions. We've got more standees, more havens. That's interesting. I wonder if it increases the player count. I don't think it does. So if you want your game to have a climactic finale in the last chapter, add the Arch Nemesis to your game. So this is another way to, I guess, make the game harder. So what I've been told, and obviously I haven't played this yet because I'm just unboxing it now, but what I've seen is that this is already a difficult game, just in general. So to add even more difficulty to it is probably asking for a failure at this point. So yeah, it adds to the Omen phase. So we have expansion factions. Okay, so it doesn't look like it increases the player count. It just increases your option in terms of factions. But that's nice. I like extra factions. So we've got the Herd. That's one of our new factions. It gives you story on them. Okay, so it looks like this is a kind of a book here at this point. No more, we're not into game rules anymore. We're actually telling a story. A lot of great art. I love this art. This is the backdrop to that graveyard board for the Legion, and this is Probably my favorite art I've seen in this yet. A lot of art. Wow. Okay, so back to the story here. Okay, so this is just a little mini novel, basically, a little short story that they've written for the game. Credits. Okay, so what was that? About 10 pages of rules and then another 30 pages of art and story. Here are our new factions. So here is the Herd. Again, you know, these factions, this faction board at least, doesn't change anything. This is all, every player has access to these things. They can all build units, they all have havens. This guy actually can't build walls and towers, which is different. And these actions are typically the same. Sometimes the costs are a little different, but these are the same actions that everybody has. The variability comes in the feat deck for the heroes more than anything else. And then you got sort of a story on the back. Here's our other new faction. Looks like Lizardmen. And then our third, oh, it looks like we got 4. These are Lizard Riders, so Legionnaires. So these don't have walls or towers either. They have an extra unit. So what did the Herd get? So they can't build walls or towers. Okay, but their units have special rules. So let's take a look at that. Because these guys, they can't build walls and towers, but they get a frickin' T-Rex instead, which is cool. And then they have special production rules, so they don't get resource production. Instead, they gain twice the bonus resources of each hex with one of their havens. Interesting. When they place a haven, they immediately place a wall and tower on it. Huh. Okay. Then we've got the, looks like the cat people. And here are our lizardmen that we already looked at. Okay, so a couple interesting new changes, and obviously with new factions, we've got new faction boxes here. One of the things I really like, and they did this in the base game as well, is they put a void here. So these are really easy to get out. So let's go and take a look at what we got here. So we've got our new faction pieces with our bases. Here's gray, brown, and these are our new Legion pieces, so we'll add those to the main box. And then in these other two, we've got our new cards, our new big cards, extra chaos. Let's take a look at these real quick, because I think these are the Arch Nemesis ones. Harvester, King of Plagues, and Stormbringer. Again, I just really like these acrylic pieces a lot. I think this is a smart move. I'd like to see a lot more of this happen, just in general. Our Haven pieces for all of our new factions, our scoring trackers for all our new factions. Here's our Lizardmen, it looks like, for our green faction. So let's take a look at our cards. So, and I will say that in the base box, there was a lot of extra space, especially for cards. So if you wanted to sleeve these, I think you could definitely get away with it. I don't know how well sleeving will work with this mechanic, this little pin mechanic that they have where you slot the thing on side of it. I don't know how that would work with sleeves, but there's definitely enough space in the base box for sleeves if you wanted to go that way. Which means that there's definitely enough space for all these cards, because these aren't a ton of cards. So here we have the Herd, because the Herd has special rules. So the Herd standee is not a unit, just a placeholder. You may place it at any time with your units and place your units here or vice versa. Okay, your unit limit on a hex is equal to the Herd size track. Place a threat tracker on this card starting at 5. When you place a Haven, increase the Herd size by 1 permanently. But you can only roll 5 of their unit dice in combat. That's interesting. I don't know exactly how that will work, but here are our new Imperial Legions. So we have the Butcher, and we have the Inquisitor. So these are just new Imperial Legions that can come out. New Chaos Horde to add to the deck. The King of Plagues and the Stormbringer. Wow, he rolls a black die. That's dangerous. And then here are our new heroes. So for this faction, you have Falca, mostly leadership. Again, leadership is defensive, and then Muir the Bulwark, which is might, which is obviously offensive. Yavi the Oracle is leadership, magic, and guile. And then Kuishi the Wayfarer, mostly, well, it looks like the same. So pretty much the same, except this one has 2 magic, the other one had 1, and this one has 1 lead, the other one had 2. Talak the Oathbreaker is mostly magic, and Mukla the Mutant is might and guile. And then Sedani the Pathfinder, might and guile, and Azer the Vagabond is guile, leadership, and magic. So these are the arch nemesis, right? Yes. So the Kraken, the Harvester, the Dracolich, and the Empress are all arch legions, or arch nemesis, sorry. So it looks like when they come out, they have placement rules. All of them have different placement rules. And then activation rules on the other side. Interesting. So this is interesting. So this one, when you defeat him, you gain 9 victory points, and you may give them to any player or players. So again, you know, you win as a team, so you don't want your teammates. You can be doing really well, but if your teammates are struggling, you're not going to win. So what else we got? We have a new deck of small cards. This is mostly going to be the feat decks for the new factions. So we've got the Oracle here. Let's take a look at one of these, because we didn't really look at these in depth in the base game. So here is Yavi the Oracle. She's mostly leadership with some magic and some guile. So again, some cards are always. This is our always. You discard this, then pick the Chaos or Legion Imperial Graveyard and return all player units there to the reserve. So why is that good? Because at the end of the round, the Legion and the Chaos are going to score points based off the units in their graveyard, basically anything they kill. So this is denying them points. So this one is involved in the clash round. While you have it, remove 1 wall here to pick a color of enemy dice and ignore all damage on it. Removing a wall means that you need to be in an area with Haven. So you're kind of hurting yourself, but to ignore all hits on 1 color of dice could potentially be, you know, catastrophic. Here's another always card. Choose 1 druid from the box and place it on this card. This is now both a druid and feat. Any player may use this druid. So the druid cards we saw in the first game, they kind of add special abilities to combat, mostly revolving around magic. So you're basically adding another druid card, but it says any player. So I don't think that this will apply to Legion and the Chaos, which is good. Again, another one of these feat cards where you choose what stat you want to increase. You also get 3 resources. This is a really good one to get, obviously. This one happens in the archery phase and the clash phase. If you have 1 or more harpooners here, you can spend magic to get production or resources. What else do we have? So here's an action one. Flip this when you use the quest action to succeed at any quest goal. So she's really good at doing quests if you can get this out. I mean, a lot of quests, or probably about half of them, only require 1 success. So this is basically an auto success on a quest. So this one is, in a clash phase, gain 1 white dice for every stone shells that were destroyed last round. Obviously stone shells are your units, so, but this is a permanent ability. So you build a lot of stone shells. Whenever you take damage from an enemy, you choose what units you lose. So obviously if you have this out, you're going to choose your stone shells, because in the next clash phase, you get to roll an extra die for every stone shell that you just destroyed. Another one to increase your stats. Flip this. So again, flip this is once per round abilities to double your shields this round. So yeah, so there's more cards for the green faction. Let's put our cards in here. We've got our feat cards for our yellow faction. Both of our gray faction guys. Go here. More yellows, or I guess that's brown. More greens. Oh, okay, so it looks like there's sort of an orange and a brown, and I got them mixed up. Those are a little too close for me. So there we go. So both our orange guys go here, both our brown guys go here. And I didn't show it in the base game, but basically all your components, your havens, your score counter, all of your units, they fit with room to spare in these boxes. And again, you can see the cards have room to spare as well. If you wanted to sleeve them, I don't think that would be a problem. But that's it. So that's the expansion. This is the Arch Nemesis expansion. Again, 4 new factions, which is 8 playable characters, as well as the Arch Nemesis and the Omen expansion, if you want to make the game even harder than it already was, as well as the base game for Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor from Nemesis Games. And thank you for watching.